G'day friends, it's Andrew here from Nature's Image Photography, and in this video I'm going to be taking a close look at the Leica Panasonic 8 to 18mm f2.8 to f4 lens. It's the first time I've used a really wide angle lens on the Lumix cameras, and I've done a bit of landscape photography lately, so it seemed like a good opportunity to give this lens a try. Now before we get started, if you're new to my channel, I would love it if you subscribe if you haven't already, so you can stay in touch with whatever comes in the future on my Lumix series. And if you would like to support what I do, you can always buy me a coffee, and you'll find a link in the information below. Now this lens came to me very generously from a friend of mine, Sean, if you're watching, thanks very much. Sean loaned me this lens just before I left on my tours. 2022 was the year I finally got back into touring after a couple of years break for obvious reasons, and the first tour I did was Tanzania, which was mostly wildlife, so that was all about the big telephoto lens. But these two tours I was doing wildflowers in Western Australia and then outback South Australia, very much focused on landscapes. So with the new tours coming up, Sean offered to loan me this lens, and I can tell you I've given it a real workout over the last couple of months. Now, people who watch my videos will know I'm not a very technical reviewer. I like to let my photos do the talking. So what I'd like to do is give you a few impressions of the lens, a bit of information about it, and then I'll finish with a bunch of photographs so you can see what I've been able to produce using the Leica Panasonic 8 to 18mm lens. So if you're not familiar with the Leica Panasonic 8 to 18mm, chances are you have had experience with the Leica Panasonic 12 to 60. And I only mention that because these two lenses are very much the same size. So for anyone who's interested in the size and weight of the lens, I'll put them side by side, and you can see that they are very similar in size and very similar in weight too. Now beyond that, I think it's time that I got into some more detailed specs, and here they are. The Leica Panasonic 8 to 18mm is relatively small, which is what you expect from a micro four thirds lens, but it's also nice and solid, which is true of every Leica Panasonic lens I've ever used. It's a mostly metal construction, weather sealed, and apparently freeze proof to -10 degrees Celsius. It's 88mm long, not including the lens hood, and it weighs 315 grams. As I mentioned in the intro, it's a very similar size and weight to the 12 to 60mm, which is one of the most popular lenses in the range. So if you've ever held that lens in your hand, then you have a rough idea of what to expect from this lens. I've used the 8 to 18 on the Lumix G9 and on the heavier Lumix GH6, and I find it balances nicely with both bodies. It's a bit of a Goldilocks lens in that it doesn't seem too big and heavy, nor does it feel too small and lightweight. When paired with your Lumix camera, it fits just right. The widest aperture ranges from f2.8 at the wide angle of 8mm, and that drops to f4 as you zoom it out to the 18. So not the widest aperture you'll ever see, and not constant either, but still pretty healthy for such a compact zoom lens. The filter thread is 67mm if you're looking to add a polarizer, ND or UV filter. The barrel of the lens is simple and uncluttered, with only one switch on the side to select manual or autofocus. And yes, that means this lens isn't stabilised, so you're going to be relying on the body stabilisation of your Lumix camera. That's no big deal to me, because with a lens like this, camera shake isn't the kind of issue it can be with a larger lens like my big 100 to 400mm. And don't forget the G9 has 6.5 stops of body stabilisation, and the GH6 takes that even further to 7.5 stops. In fact, when I made my recent video about shooting high-resolution files handheld on the GH6, most of those photos were taken, handheld remember, using this lens. To finish off my look at the handling experience, the zoom and the manual focus rings are wonderfully smooth. The slight tension is constant throughout the entire turning circle, so for videographers you can zoom and focus by hand without any of that stop-start jerkiness. And the zoom happens entirely inside the outer barrel of the lens, so as you can see here, the lens itself doesn't change in size as you zoom in and out. Now with all that said, I'm sure what you really want to know is, does it produce good photos? Well, I'm going to finish this video with a selection of my favourite photos taken on the 8 to 18mm lens and finished off in Adobe Camera Raw. But before I get to those, I want to show you a few unedited photos so you can see how things look straight out of camera. As you can see, the photos are sharp, and they have the powerful depth of field and strong perspective that you expect from a wide-angle lens. And when you shoot very wide, you also get that familiar inwards lean, which of course is very common and can be corrected to some extent with post-processing. But there's a couple of things in particular I want to draw your attention to. The first is the lack of vignetting, which you often see on lesser quality wide-angle lenses. You can really see it in the blue skies, which maintain their tone right to the corners of the image. Even in a shot like this one, that deeper blue on the left isn't caused by vignetting, it's simply because we're looking at such a wide angle of sky and the sun was over to the right. The other thing I've noticed, if it's possible to notice something that isn't there, is the lack of chromatic aberration, which I had to contend with all the time back in my DSLR days, but it seems to be a thing of the past with these high quality Leica Panasonic lenses. Finally, and this is something I've just realised as I'm going through selecting these photos, you can see the lens keeps the horizon really flat, even when it's low down in the frame like it is here. I know these aren't great photos, but I also know any landscape photographer will appreciate a lens that can give you a perfectly flat horizon straight out of camera. Okay, that's just about all I've got to tell you about the Leica Panasonic 8-18mm. All that's left is to show you a few of my favourite photos taken on the lens. Although I've only borrowed this lens up till now, it's definitely on my shopping list as one I'd like to own. Thanks to you for watching, and if you like the photos I'm about to show you, keep an eye out because I've got more videos on the way from my latest Outback tours. I'm Andrew Goodall, this is Nature's Image Photography, thanks for watching.